How's everyone doing today? It's Dr. Rhodes. I just can't stop doing that. I love it. So this is, I don't know if anyone remembers, this is how the U.S. military smoked Russian mercenaries. I call it the Wagner, but it's the Wagner. So back in 2018, I knew a little bit about it from Quora, however you want to say it. And I think I heard about it in March, and I didn't remember the year, but they said it was 2018. This was in February. And I had heard about it, about what had happened for this battle. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, this is going to be great for you because it's kind of crazy. And if you do know what I'm talking about, then you kind of get a picture, not necessarily, I don't know if this is real footage or what, but you're going to be able to kind of visualize it more, I guess. I've seen 2 people react to them. I haven't watched the reactions, but I saw they reacted to it, and I was like, okay, I got to jump on this because I remember it. So it's a short one. Let's do it.
When the first vehicle in the convoy suddenly blew up, the Russian mercenaries knew something was wrong. Their objective, to capture an oil field in eastern Syria, was supposed to be a routine mission. The enemy, they knew by then, would have fled long ago at the sight of 500 battle-hardened Russian and Syrian fighters. But instead, the attack had come to an abrupt halt, and explosion after explosion shook the ground. It wasn't long before AC-130 gunships, Predator drones, Apache helicopters, and fighter jets were circling over the battlefield, pounding the attackers from every imaginable angle. What the Russian forces didn't know was that the oil field was not defended by any fighters, but by American Special Operations Forces, supported by the most powerful air force in the world. And so, within a few minutes, the routine mission turned into hell on earth and into one of the deadliest engagements for the notorious Russian mercenary group Wagner. To stop the rapid advance of the self-proclaimed Islamic State, the U.S. had deployed troops in Syria since 2014. They supported the so-called Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF. A year later, Russia also intervened in the fight against ISIS, but on the side of Assad's Syrian government forces. The SDF and the Syrian army were never seen as allies, but in keeping with the saying, "the enemy of my enemy is my friend," both parties at least mostly avoided each other. After years of fighting, both armies managed to drive out the terrorists, and by 2018, ISIS held only a fraction of its original bases. To prevent an unintended conflict between Russian and US-supported armies, a deconfliction line was formed along the Euphrates River, which effectively bisects Syria. In addition, both parties were able to contact each other through special telephone channels that were kept clear at any time. But despite all these precautions, on February 7th, just a few miles from the Euphrates River, the first deadly clash between Russians and Americans since the Cold War occurred. Late in the evening of February 7, 2018, 500 Russian and Syrian fighters attacked an SDF military base. The base was located about 5 miles east of the Euphrates River and controlled one of the country's main oil fields. Thus, like most oil fields, the area was officially on the Syrian Democratic side of the ceasefire line. But this did not stop the Syrian-Russian troops in any way. The attackers were supported by various Russian-made battle tanks, as well as mortars, artillery, and rocket launchers, with which they began shelling the SDF base without warning. In addition, Russian Air Force aircraft were on standby to provide air support, but initially remained on the ground. However, while everything was initially going according to plan for the attacking forces, the phone suddenly rang in the Russian headquarters near the Euphrates. A representative of the U.S. military was on the line and wanted to know whether Russian fighters were currently trying to take the military base at the Conoco oil fields. Here, not only the Syrian Democratic Forces were under heavy artillery fire, but also their allies, American Green Berets, Army Rangers, Marines, and various support units. After the Russians had explicitly denied the question whether the enemy were their troops, it was clear to the caller. Whoever was currently taking fire at his soldiers, he would feel the full force of the American military in just a few moments. The response to the attack on their military base was prompt and tremendous. Even before the Russian convoy reached its starting position for the attack, the first and last vehicles were taken out in a classic ambush maneuver, trapping the forces in the middle. The missiles came from an...
Wow.
With the Google Pixel 7,
what I really knew was it was Russia and Syria, the U.S. and some Syria people, and then I knew it was in Syria clearly, and I knew it was an oil field. That was all I knew going into it, and I kind of know the outcome, but I'm going to keep that hush hush. But I'm curious to see how the whole thing plays out, even though you understand.
The missiles came from an American Reaper drone, which had been targeting the convoy for some time. However, to the Russian Wagner mercenaries on the ground, the drone was invisible, and they had a hard time understanding where the fire suddenly came from. It didn't take long for more shells to hit, spreading chaos on the battlefield. American artillery and HIMARS rocket launchers engaged the convoy, inflicting numerous casualties. While the Russian forces were still trying to realize what was happening, 4 Apache helicopters appeared on the horizon. Although the gunships were several miles away, no one could hide from their precise infrared optics. The laser-guided Hellfire missiles found their target in the Russian battle tanks, while the 30mm cannon forced the enemy infantry to withdraw. Few of them were able to escape the explosive shells, and a Russian survivor later reported that they suffered about 200 casualties within the first few minutes, almost half of the entire attack force.
Wow.
The reports that are on TV about, well, you know, about Syria and the 25 people that are wounded there from the Syrian army, and, well, to make it short, we've had our kicked. So one squadron lost 200 people. Right away, another one lost 10 people. And I don't know about the third squadron, but it got torn up pretty badly too. So 3 squadrons took a beating. The Yankees attacked. First, they blasted the out of us by artillery, and then they took 4 helicopters up and pushed us in a merry-go-round with heavy caliber machine guns. They were all shelling the holy out of it, and our guys didn't have anything besides the assault rifles. Nothing at all, not even mentioning shoulder-fired SAMs or...
Sounds like they truly went in thinking we're going to bomb it, and then we're going to go on in, and they're going to have scattered, because they're not going to want any part of us and this huge military force, not knowing what they were facing. They were probably looking at the amount of people that were at the base, let's say 100, and they had 500, and so they rolled in like that.
Anything like that. So they tore us to pieces for sure, put us through hell. And the Yankees knew for sure that the Russians were coming, that it was us, Russians. Our guys were coming to commandeer an oil refinery, and the Yankees were holding it. We got our beat rough. My men called me. They're there drinking now. Many have gone missing. It's a total It sucks. Another takedown. While AC-130 gunships circled over the battlefield engaging individual targets, large B-52 strategic bombers completely destroyed the convoy. Those who managed to escape hid in buildings, but even there they were not safe for long. Late into the night, the attackers were hunted by F-15 fighter jets, whose bombs penetrated even the best cover. The new 5th-generation air superiority fighter F-22 Raptor was also used. But for the soldiers on the ground, it no longer made any difference who was pounding them. The Russian contractors did not stand a chance against the American Air Force. Although there were rumors that some pilots from the nearby Russian air base were asking for permission to take off, the blue-painted Su-34s and 35s remained on the ground. The attackers' casualties were so heavy.
Yeah, if you commit your planes and you escalate it, then it just continues to escalate, and eventually someone has to, pull the cord and stop. If you flip it, and this is the Americans that went there, and the Russians are defeating them, and the Americans then bring in planes, and they bring in planes, and somebody has to eventually just sacrifice the people on the ground, unfortunately, to stave off, to stop something bigger from happening. How about that?
Heavy that in the middle of the battle, one of the Russian commanders called in and asked for a ceasefire, indicating that Russian military was in contact with the attacking fighters after all. A published call from a Wagner mercenary sums up events in Syria. Just had a call with a guy. So they basically formed a convoy, but didn't get to their positions by some 300 meters. One unit moved forward. The convoy remained in place about 300 meters from the others. The others raised the American flag, and their artillery started ours really hard. Then their choppers flew in and started everybody. Ours just running around. Just got a call from a pal, so they're about 215 killed. They simply rolled ours out hard. Made their point. What the ours were hoping for in there? That they'll run away themselves? Hope to scare them away? Lots of people so bad they can't be ID'd. Wow. There were no foot soldiers on the American side. They simply our convoy with artillery. When the battle ended early next morning, there was nothing left of the convoy of vehicles. All combat vehicles have been destroyed, with the exception of a single battle tank and armored personnel carrier. Of approximately 500 Russian and Syrian attackers, at least 200 were killed or wounded. One of the mercenaries later reported that in some places they found solidified melted sand and gun barrels bent from the heat.
Wow.
There were no casualties on the American side and no reports of damaged aircraft. Only one of the SDF soldiers in the base at the oil field was wounded by Russian fire, but survived. The incident sparked outrage on both Russian and Syrian sides, but since the Americans had repeatedly reassured themselves through the Russian officials, they could not be blamed. According to intercepted phone calls between the leader of Wagner and Russian ministers, the attack was even said to be an order from Moscow. For Wagner Group fighters, the Battle of Conoco Fields went down in history as Red February and was one of their most humiliating engagements. At least some of them received a medal specially made for this event. It shows a Russian soldier surrounded by flames, heroically shooting at an American Apache helicopter, a scene that probably never took place in this way. The Syrian Democratic Forces and their American allies had successfully defended the base at the oil field and continued to fortify it. The demonstration of their superior air power was meant to be a warning to any hostile forces not to mess with the wrong people. Interestingly, when Syrian and Russian fighters gathered in the area again about a month later, the Americans once more contacted the Russian commander in charge. This time, it was not long after the end of the phone call that the entire Russian-Syrian fighting force hastily withdrew. For those who made it this far, thanks for watching. If you want...
Wow, yeah, I didn't know about the second approach. But yeah, I heard it happened in the middle of the night, and it was brutal. Yeah, and it... You know, I feel bad for the... Wagner. I keep wanting to say Wagner, but I feel bad for the Wagner groups because it sounds like, you know, yeah, they were told to go in and they just weren't anticipating what was waiting. Not necessarily waiting for them. What was waiting for anyone who was going to come into that situation. And they were given just their assault rifle kind of thing, and that was it. And it's not good. All right, well, I'm going to end this here. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. And I don't know what that is. It was just there. So I showed you. And now we're going to end the video. Have a good day. Have a good night.